Donald Trump flailing today. It's his usual tricks of attacking his critics and filibustering through live call-in interviews do precious little to paper over the gaping questions about his handling of the Epstein files. One day after being singled out by Donald Trump for saying that the Epstein case could break Donald Trump's grip on his base of supporters and the Republican Party, radio and podcast host Charlemagne the God fired right back.
My fellow Americans, we are in a strange time right now, a time we have never seen because authoritarian strategy is being used against anyone who speaks out against this administration. We saw what happened Friday. President Trump orders, the firing of labor statistic chief after data shows unemployment rates are higher. I don't know if you know President Trump, but by firing this woman, you added to the unemployment rate. But that, along with his reaction to what I said on Lara Trump, shows how authoritarians will attempt to bully people into pushing false narratives. Whenever you see Trump trying to deflect from what's important, keep him focused. Ask two simple questions. What about the economy? What about the Epstein files?
So what about it? Especially the second one. What about the Epstein files? It's actually a question that a lot of people across the country are asking right now. And unease and anger over the Trump administration's handling of both issues, but especially the Epstein files, is being felt deeply across the country. It even came up at a rowdy and at times hostile town hall meeting being held by a Republican congressman in deep red Nebraska.
Why are you covering up the Epstein files?
Let's be very clear. At the next pro forma session of the Congress, you'll find my name as a sponsor on a resolution from the House Rules Committee to release the Epstein files to protect the victims and not re-victimize them again.
As for those victims, many of the victims themselves are pleading for more transparency. As we reported yesterday, two victims wrote new letters to the federal court and the Justice Department, ripping the government for its handling of the case and the administration's request to release grand jury transcripts in the Epstein and Maxwell cases. One of those letters says, quote, "I am not some pawn in your political warfare." Another says that the Trump administration is, quote, "asking to release these transcripts, exhibits, etc., of which the victims are not privy to, while they have concluded that there is nothing more to see on the files they hold. Yet no one has seen them but them. I am beside myself." Well, it turns out those grand jury transcripts contain no new information. That's according to an admission from the Trump Justice Department. In a letter to a judge filed this morning, DOJ says this, quote, "Much of the information provided during the course of the grand jury testimony, with the exception of the identities of certain victims and witnesses, was made publicly available at trial or has otherwise been publicly reported through the public statements of victims and witnesses." Now, on the whole, the Trump administration's attempt to brand their weird moves as transparent just is not working. It's being undermined by a steady drip of revelations that only add to the questions around Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and their years-long friendship. Last week, you'll recall, Trump said this about kicking Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago.
He took people that worked for me, and I told him don't do it anymore, and he did it, and I said, stay the hell out of here.
Trump later said that one of the employees Epstein, quote, stole from him was Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre. She met Epstein's longtime girlfriend and accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, at the spot in Mar-a-Lago in the year 2000. Now, this is important because that version of events from Trump contradicts years of reporting from the Washington Post and other news outlets that makes clear that Trump's story before this was that he and Epstein fell out of a real estate deal in the year 2004. Today, the Daily Beast adds new and further complicating data points. They point this out, quote, Epstein was a member of the club until October 2007, more than 1 year after he was indicted and released on bail. according to the book The Grifters Club, Trump, Mar-a-Lago, and the Selling of the Presidency. Now, while it is possible that Epstein was already banned from physically walking inside the club, the Daily Beast notes this, quote, in the footnotes of their book, the team of Miami Herald journalists, Sarah Blasky, Caitlin Ostroff, Nicholas Nahamus, and Jay Weaver report, quote, the authors viewed a membership list showing that Epstein's account had been closed in October 2007. Donald Trump finding himself on the other side of survivors and a majority of the American public regarding showing that he's interested in being transparent in the Epstein case, as questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein refuse to die down, is where we start today. Podcast host and author of The Red Letter on Substack, Tara Palmeri, is back with us. She has hosted 2 investigative series on the topic called Broken, Jeffrey Epstein, and Power, the Maxwells. Also joining us, former Democratic Senator, MSNBC Political Analyst Claire McCaskill is here, and former Criminal Division Deputy Chief at SDNY, MSNBC legal analyst, host of a new YouTube show, Courtside, Kristy Greenberg is here. Tara, I read your new reporting today and my mind was blown by your reporting and sort of weaving together the Ghislaine Maxwell story. I want to ask you to take us through it, but I first want to get your reaction to these 2 letters from victims to the judge and the Department of Justice, really calling out the handling of the political firestorm in a way that completely neglects the victims of Epstein and Maxwell's.
It's been a mess, and it's been a disgrace, and it's consistent with everything I've heard. They keep telling me over and over again they feel left out, they're out of the loop. They're wondering why they're not getting a call and why it's Ghislaine Maxwell. And they also feel re-traumatized by this, the idea that there may be some sort of deal happening behind their backs with Ghislaine Maxwell after all those years of testimony of having to tell their stories over again and being re-traumatized. This is really consistent with what I have been hearing over and over again about feeling like they are about to be let down again. And let's not even go back to, 2008 when that sweetheart non-prosecution agreement came out and Jeffrey Epstein got a slap on the wrist. He was supposed to get 60 federal crimes against him, and it went down to 0. And he spent 13 months in a county jail with work release half the time and an ankle bracelet, and was called a sex offender. So this is giving them nightmares, deja vu, and they don't trust the government, which is supposed to be looking out for them and for all of us.
What is their understanding of why, or the circumstances around what happened between Friday and our broadcast yesterday, that Kendall Laney and Lisa Rubin at our network reported that Ghislaine Maxwell was moved from a low security prison to an even lower security prison, and that there was a rather unusual or unprecedented waiver granted by the Bureau of Prisons, something that an expert said he'd never seen for sex offenders?
It's unheard of. And I was speaking to Maria Farmer, who went to the FBI in 1996 to report Jeffrey Epstein, and then again in 2004, and has been cooperating the entire way. And she called me yesterday and she was like, I'm worried the next step is house arrest. That's what it feels like. I mean, this is a place where Elizabeth Holmes is. She's about to get out in 2032. She's got visitation rights because she has a toddler. They have fences here. This is not the place where you put a sex trafficker. This is not the place where you put a pedophile who was not just an enabler for Jeffrey Epstein. And that's why I wrote that piece, Nicolle. Not for you, because I know you're aware of that and you understand that she was a predator herself. She had the psychology of a psychopath, the type of person who could manipulate while pretending to show care, emotional detachment, and where she learned it. And I think they're terrified that this person is going to be let loose again, because she should be looked at as someone who could be let loose as a predator.
Well, something that people don't understand, and I run into people And I'm often listening to your podcast or listening to something old that I missed from Julie Brown, or really trying to educate myself. A lot of people don't know or understand that she participated in the sexual abuse. Can you just remind folks what Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted of?
Well, in the case of Virginia Giuffre, who Ghislaine Maxwell, by the way, found in the spa at Mar-a-Lago, Jeffrey Epstein couldn't get into a ladies' spa, right, and find the attendant there. And she found her. She brought her to Jeffrey Epstein's house, said, I will make you a traveling masseuse. That was Virginia's dream at the time. She was reading a book about how to do it. And when she got into the house, it was Ghislaine Maxwell who took off her panties before Jeffrey Epstein touched her. You know, in the case of Annie Farmer, it was Ghislaine Maxwell who fondled her breast when she was 16 years old, isolated on the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, where Jeffrey Epstein dreamed of turning it into a place to breed children. This is a sick, depraved woman who not only enabled this, created a pyramid scheme, by the way, in a local high school, managed it, which took a lot of work, believe it or not, shuttling these children back and forth, making sure they all came so that Jeffrey Epstein could get his 3 orgasms per day. I mean, this was a sophisticated operation. It required pilots, chefs, chauffeurs, cooks moving around. And she ran it all. She was a lady of the house. And she engaged in the abuse at the same time. Now, that's why so many of the victims feel like she's even worse. They feel even more betrayed by her because in the case of Annie, I mean, she told me in an interview that she said, you know, when I first met him, I thought, who's this guy? You know, he feels a little weird. But when she heard that his girlfriend Ghislaine was coming with him to this ranch, she thought it would be okay. And it was Ghislaine who called her mother and said it would be okay. So she opened doors for Jeffrey to children that he would have never gotten.